All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're looking at a worldview that asks a really big question. Are we just stuck with the limits of life on Earth, or is there some way to break free? The source material we're digging into proposes a pretty radical alternative to what it calls the shackles of Earth. I mean, think about it. Have you ever felt like we're all just stuck in a loop? That the human story is basically the same thing over and over, just with different people? Well, that's the exact dilemma this text starts with. This idea that maybe, just maybe, we're all destined to repeat the past. So here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to look at what the source calls the unavoidable human cycle. Then we'll dive into its promise of new life, and after that, the specific path to forgiveness it lays out. From there, we'll explore the huge shift from being a servant to a child, and we'll wrap it all up with a really cool metaphor, a worm or an eagle. Okay, first up, the unavoidable human cycle. So the source kicks things off by framing our normal, everyday existence as something, well, finite. Something that's caught in a pattern that just keeps repeating itself. Let's see what that really means. And here's the core idea. The text basically claims that there is nothing new. It argues that no matter how much we think we've advanced, we're all just walking along the same path, experiencing the same fundamental things that every single generation before us did. And here are those fundamental things laid out plain and simple. The source calls this sequence, birth, aging, illness, and death, the actual shackles of our life here. It's not just seen as a natural process, but more like a kind of prison cycle that defines our time on Earth. But right after painting that kind of bleak picture, the text makes a huge pivot. And that brings us to our second section, the promise of new life. This is where we get introduced to a completely different path, an alternative to that cycle of suffering we just talked about. And wow, look at the contrast here. This is the vision that's being offered, a total reversal of everything on the last slide. It's a reality defined by what's not there. No more tears, no more pain, no more death. It's presented as a whole other level of existence. So here's the kicker. How do you get this new life? According to this text, it's not about making things better here on Earth. Not at all. It's about getting access to a completely new life, an eternal one, through God, in a place it calls heaven. Okay, so if that's the promise, how do you get there? What's the process? Well, Section 3, the path to forgiveness, is basically the how-to guide. It's described as a clear, actionable set of steps, not just some vague hope. The source breaks it down into these 3 key steps. First, you have to engrave the truth in your heart. That leads to the second step, which is to receive forgiveness of sins. And the result of all that, the final step, is that you become a son of God. That's the sequence right there. And just to be super clear on that first step, the text defines a key term. When it talks about acting in the name of Jesus, it clarifies that this isn't just about saying some words. It means you have to actively receive and embrace the words of God's truth. It's something that happens inside. Now, if you follow this path, the text argues that it leads to a total change in who you are. And that brings us right to our fourth section, from servant to child, which is all about getting a completely transformed identity. And check this out. The comparison is so clear. On one side, you've got the Son of Man, who is described as a slave to the flesh, tied to that old cycle of birth and death. But on the other side, you have the Son of God, who is a spiritual body, totally free from all those limits. It's a huge shift. And this isn't just a new title, it's a change in your actual status. The source really emphasizes that this path gives you the power or the authority to become sons of God. It's like going from being powerless in the earthly cycle to being an empowered member of a new spiritual family. And all of this leads to our final section, which uses this really powerful metaphor to sum the whole thing up. A worm or an eagle. This is presented as the ultimate choice between 2 totally different ways of being. I mean, you can just picture it, right? The worm-like life is all about crawling on the earth, stuck, limited, part of that repetitive cycle we started with. But the eagle-like life, that's about soaring in the sky. It's glorious, it's free, and it's on a whole other spiritual level. And here it is, the final call to action from the source. It's a direct challenge to the reader to make a conscious choice, to ditch one way of living for the other, to stop crawling and start soaring. So in the end, we're left with this choice. This text frames our whole existence as a decision between 2 possible destinies. And according to this perspective, the path you take determines everything. Whether your life is defined by the shackles of earth or the freedom of the sky? Crawling or soaring? That's the question it leaves you with.